Hey everybody, and welcome to How to Be Funny podcast module number 3. Today we're talking about observational comedy. You have to excuse me, I'm a bit croaky this morning. I've just got out of bed, but my voice should improve as the podcast goes on. Anyway, observational comedy. Look, it's one of the most fundamental forms of comedy today. You've got your Chris Rock with his African American perspective on observational comedy. You got your Jerry Seinfeld, of course, king of observational comedy. Your Louis C.K. These are people who they take raw material of life and they turn it into humor. So there's no reason why anyone who is living a life can't do that. I mean, you and I, we all live a life. We've just got to transform our life and our observations into pure comedy, which it can be done by following a few simple rules. Okay, well, let's start off with rule number 1, setting the scene. Okay, now when you set the scene, you're letting the audience know that this is observational comedy that you're talking about. You're not telling them a joke per se. You're not telling them a crazy story or sorry, there's a bit of noise through the door. You're not where was I? You're basically telling them this is observational comedy. Now you can do that with a few key words, like you could start off, have you ever noticed how? That's a good one. You'll often hear that. Have you ever noticed how you'll press the close button on the elevator instead of the open button and it'll shut on someone's face? That's an example. Or have you ever noticed how before it starts to hail, the clouds go really green? Actually, I'm skipping ahead. I'm actually giving you examples of observational comedy when I should be just explaining the prefacing phase. So, have you ever noticed how? Or isn't it funny when? Things like that. Anyway. Just something that sets the scene to show that you've noticed something and you want them to notice something. Okay, so that's setting the scene. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 now is be relatable. By being relatable, I mean that when you make an observation, it has to connect with your audience. I mean, there's no point in making an observation if your audience don't get it. I mean, for example, what's an observation? Have you ever noticed how your wall map is more faded on one side than the other? It's more faded on the side that the sun hits it. Okay, well, I mean, that's not going to that applies to me. I notice that because I've got a big map of the world on my wall there. If you don't have a map on your wall, you're probably not going to have noticed that. It's not a universal experience, not a relatable experience. You could try and broaden it. Like, have you ever noticed how your poster fades on one side? A lot of people have posters or your art print or whatever. So you've got to be relatable. Personally, I don't think that's broad enough. That's something you'd test out on an audience on an open mic night, for example, and see whether or not they could relate to the poster story. I don't think they would, personally. I think you need something that's more universal. For example, I mentioned the hail one before. That's pretty universal. Most latitudes, temperate, tropical, will get hailstorms at some point, and most people have probably noticed that the sky goes a bit green before there's a hailstorm. So weather is a good one because it's universal. The elevator one I mentioned was excellent because it's an urban environment, and a lot of people live in urban environments. Even people who live in the country would have come to the city at some point, or a local township where there was an elevator, and they'd totally get the button thing. So that's rule number 2. That's be relatable. Now, rule number 3 is probably the most important, and that's add a comic twist. Okay, you've got to add a comic twist. It's not just enough to have the observation, you then have to twist it. You put a little twist on it to make it a comic twist. Otherwise, you're just reporting facts. You may as well be a reporter on CNN or whatever. Or a scientist saying, well, the clouds go green before a hailstorm. That's not enough. You've got your core observation, now you have to put the comic twist on it. So for example, with the door shutting in the faces with the elevator, I would say that to the audience, and then I would add a comic twist, which turned it around, surprised them, made it funny. Same with the here's what's another one. Have you ever noticed how your teacups, after a while, your teacups get a brown stain in them, which you've got to clean out with bleach? Okay, you'd start with that, and then you'd add a little comic twist, and you turn it into something amusing. So that's the third and most important point. Add the comic twist to the observation. So just to summarize now, our 3 rules. What was rule 1? Summarize our 3 rules now. I'll have to go back and check. Hold on. Okay, I got it now. Our 3 rules. Don't forget our 3 rules. Number 1, set the scene. Number 2, be relatable. And number 3, add a comic twist. If you follow those 3 rules, there's no stopping you in observational comedy. Alright, cool. Stay tuned tomorrow for another How to Be Funny podcast. Thanks for watching.